Hello and welcome to the Metapod, the Pokemon TCG podcast that revolves around the evolving meta and the calendar as well. Sean, we're in 2022 now, the first pod of 2022. How are you doing?
I'm good. I hear 2022, and I'm sure other people have made this joke, but I'm going to say it again too. I don't want to repeat 2020. So
I don't either.
you know, the name 2022, and I'm like, is it 2022? No, it's 2020 plus 2.
This is not the remake. This is not the Diamond and Pearl remake, Sean. Brilliant Diamond, Shining Pearl. This is a new era. This is Legends Arceus.
That's right.
Time. That game coming out in a couple weeks.
Yeah, I mean, I've also seen the memes making the rounds for Legends Arceus where it's like everybody dropping Diamond and Pearl and being like, I'm done with you. Just picking up Arceus.
That's basically what happened to Sword and Shield. I mean, every time I get on Twitch right now, like Sword and Shield has less than 1,000 viewers in the category. And I mean that shouldn't surprise me though, because the thing is to play like the newest games. And for Pokemon, like even if you're playing like Pokemon Emerald, the meta on Twitch is that everybody plays in the newest game category. So nobody's ever playing in Pokemon Emerald. If you're playing Pokemon Emerald, you're playing in Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl, for instance. Just because, I mean, that's what the meta is in Pokemon on Twitch.
I think it's interesting, though, because that's also, it makes a very interesting point that even within the video game world, like we talk about the majority of the card game are collectors and not necessarily players. I think it's the same with the video game. Like most of the streamers, at least, are not VGC people because there's not really a VGC in Diamond and Pearl, but you know, so that's interesting to see, like, yeah, and it makes sense, you know, like the VGC is not necessarily that popular either.
It's a very interesting like quirk about like content creating and like Pokemon in general. But Sean, we mentioned last week at the end of the pod that we did not even think about New Year's resolutions. We had forgotten that the new year was just underway. So let's kick off this podcast by talking about our New Year resolution. Sean, do you have a New Year's resolution?
I mean, I have like goals, if you will, like broad goals. I think one of them for me is to get back on a regular content creation train, you know, like a lot of it has been the adjustment from like being, 9 to 5 to not being 9 to 5 and maybe enjoying that time off a little too much. But yeah, getting back into like making content on the reg, the Metapod notwithstanding, right? Like that's my like the regular thing that I do every week is the Metapod. And like that I hold true. Yeah.
We have like consistent, like you and I have both had things come up and like life-changing things, but the Metapod has always, like, this is something that I look forward to every single week, which is interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it's like this, like, you know, people say that having routine is really important for like mental health, for all those things. And I do think that's true because, I'm not saying every day needs to be the same. You don't need to be a cartoon character with the same outfit in your closet for every day of the week. But some amount of routine gives like structure to things. And this has given me a lot of structure. So I thank you, Jake, for helping to give me some structure in that respect.
No, thank you for doing this with me. Is this 78? I think this is episode 78. Yeah. We're getting close to 100. But I will say, Sean, my New Year's resolution is to just be settled.
Oh, okay.
Because like the last like 8 months, I've been going, I graduated, I've been looking for a job. And so instead of my New Year's resolution being find a job, right? Because that's what I should be doing anyways. My New Year's resolution is to be settled, like not only have a job, but to have a place and to not be in the parents' basement. Yeah, essentially. So it's like an upgrade from the find a job, like just be independent, just be in a spot.
Yeah, like that, gaining that level of like full independence. I mean, not that you aren't necessarily, but like, you know what I mean.
I'm not really independent right now.
Yeah, but I totally get that. Like, it's a little different because I didn't go to grad school. I just went to undergrad. But like, yeah, like anybody out there who's been to some level of college, like when you're finally done. I think everybody goes to that year, maybe 2 years period. Hopefully it's not that long for you, but where like, you're like transitioning, from whatever it is to wherever you're going. And it's a tough time. It's a tough time. I think myself, and I'm sure a lot of our listeners are very sympathetic to that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very fortunate though to be able to, be in my parents' basement and to like now work part-time at a bookstore so that I'm not sitting here twiddling my thumbs and like have a place at least to stay for well, I mean, like if I couldn't find something for the next 5 years, my parents would be like,
Yeah.
oh, it's fine, like you're trying to get something. And it's not like I'm not trying to do anything.
No.
But anyways, I think things are changing. I think 2022 is going to be good, not only for us, but for the Metapod. And we got to start it out, Sean, on a high note, as always, with the 5-star review. Now, I will say on Spotify, if you did not know, they recently implemented a rating system for podcasts. So if you're on Spotify, we have many listeners from Spotify. You can go ahead to our main page on Spotify and leave us a rating. Unfortunately, you can't do a review, but you can rank us out of 5 stars. We've had 46 ratings already, Sean, in just like a little over a week.
Spotify listeners,
good.
Spotify listeners showing up, showing the support. I love it.
I know, and very, very thankful for all of you joining us into 2022, as well as our Apple podcast. I will say the highlight of my day at this point in time is that we now have 69 ratings on Apple Podcasts, which is very nice.
Yeah, so we could stop there.
Yeah, no more ratings. Stop. Anyways, this 5-star review is coming from Arc Hammondmate 42. Great for everyone is the title. 5 stars. Recently got back into Pokemon play, and this podcast is such a good listen. Keep up the great work. One of my new favorites. And you know what? Arc, you are one of my new favorites too. Thank you so much for leaving that 5-star review.
Jake, I know like reading Twitch handles is also a challenge. I think it's Arkham Inmate, like Arkham Asylum. It's like a Batman thing.
As someone who is, I'm into like anime and stuff, like DC, Marvel, all those things. Like I watch casually those. I do those casually. So you know what? That didn't register. I'll just admit it.
That's fine. Hey, look, that's a minor. It's when you read out somebody's username on Twitch and it's something very inappropriate, and you're like, oh.
See, I'm getting good at recognizing that.
See, yeah, that's your level of expertise. Is you're on that Twitch level.
Anyways, we got a lot of different things, especially there may be some scummy things going on. We talk about bad Twitch names. Well, this is $3.5 million that we're about to talk about of some significant scumminess, I guess you could call it. I'm not 100% sure, but Sean, Pokemon cards have been booming since around 18 months ago. Around they started booming, and one of the faces that has made what?
I just said 18 months.
And one of the names that have really contributed to this boom is Logan Paul. Now, regardless how you feel about Logan Paul, I know he's not a very popular figure, and I don't watch his content or enjoy stuff, but when something happens inside our community, I at least pay attention to it. And news has broken out that he recently bought a first edition authenticated box of Pokemon, like a case of boxes, first edition boxes, for $3.5 million. Sean, that is a large sum of money. First off.
It's for a sealed case. So now we will get into the details of this, but in theory, if this was real, it's like a sealed case. There's almost none in the world. There may be, I think King Gary may have one.
Can we not call him King Gary?
Yeah, okay, Gary. I say it because it's the name that people associate with him the most.
Most people will know who that is
just
by saying
Star Gary.
I'm petty, okay?
That's fair. But yeah, he has supposedly one, and that would put each of these boxes, because it's within a sealed case, at about $600,000 a box, because there's 6 boxes in a case. For those of you who don't know what a case entails.
It would be, assuming that the sealed case has 6 of them in near perfect condition, it would be assumed that it would be worth a minimum of $2.6 million. So Logan Paul, I guess you could say, overpaid market price by about $900,000, which, I mean, if you got the money, honey, go for it. But a lot of people lately have been doing some investigating on this box, where it's come from, how it has come about, and there's a lot after reading the PokeBeach article that Sean has pulled up here on YouTube. If you're watching on YouTube, there's a little bit of, this might not be exactly what we think it is. Now, Sean, looking back at this purchase history, go back to March 2021. Do you remember what we were doing on the Metapod in March 2021?
Maybe we were speculating about the return of in-person Pokemon.
Probably. I mean, we've been doing that for
vaccines are rolling out. Now? Maybe we're gonna have Worlds this year. No.
Yeah, I think around that time, actually, Worlds was canceled.
Yeah, I think they might have decided to actually cancel it, but that's also when the vaccines were rolling out. So there was like this, will they, won't they,
Yeah, exactly. But this is when the case first appeared over on eBay. And, right off the bat, just looking at that eBay page, you can see the pictures on pokebeach.com. It's one of those things where you look on eBay and you look at the seller, you look at the description, and you're like, maybe I shouldn't buy from this person. The seller had changed their name, apparently, right before listing this to kind of hide their history, per se. There's grammatical errors everywhere. And so, in my opinion, this is automatically red flag. Hello, hello, hello. Originally, Sean, it did not actually sell for very much. It originally went up. The auction ended on April 9th, 86 bids. The highest bid for this case of first edition Pokemon cards in April 2021, $72,500. Sean, I don't know much quick math, but $72,500 is a lot less than $3.5 million.
Yeah, and even if you factor in like, oh, maybe prices have gone up since then or whatever, like $72,000 for 6 first edition boxes in April or whatever, like that's absurd. That's clearly something was fishy here and people weren't buying it, literally.
Apparently, as well, the person who had bought it for the $72,500 wanted to fly over, inspect the box, as what a lot of people do when you're buying these high-end collectible products and paying large sums of money for. You probably also got the money to be able to fly out right away and check it out. But the seller said, no, you can't really check on this, which, oh, look at that, another red flag. Then in comes another seller buying it for a undisclosed amount, so shipping it to the United States, and a video was made of the box, and a authentication company called Baseball Card Exchange was there to check it out. Now, Sean, before the pod, told me basically, what the heck is this place doing authenticating this box? Because these people don't do Pokemon. Baseball Card Exchange, well, you could probably tell that they do baseball cards. And looking at this and looking at some of the stuff that we can get to later about, the packaging, the barcodes, things like that, they really probably just looked at this box, said, it's taped up. Cool. It's ready to rock and roll. Authenticated. Give it the seal of approval.
Oh, yeah, it looks sealed to me, Bob. Yeah, sure, definitely.
Sealed to me. And so it's been jumping around, blah, 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 then sells for $2.7 million. Then it's sold to Logan Paul for $3.5 million. Now, going to the box itself, there are some things that are a little bit fishy, I should say, because first edition base set boxes were made, 20 years ago or so? 20 to 25 years ago? Somewhere in that time frame?
Years. Yeah, 22, 23 years.
The information regarding this may be incomplete, may be inconclusive, because, let me... It was a long time ago, so maybe people that are bringing this up, we don't have a lot of things to go off of in terms, like, we can't just compare, a plethora of first edition sealed case boxes, right? Because I mean, if they were everywhere, they wouldn't sell for $3.5 million. But looking at the barcode usually in previous years, including Gary's box, had a barcode of WOC 06033, and that's usually what it has done. But Logan Paul's case has a 1E on the end of it. Now, the 1E, you're thinking, okay, that could be like first edition. And in the past or in the future from base set, Wizards of the Coast did start doing that. Jungle and Fossil did have 1Es on their first edition cases, but base set was one that, regardless if it had a first edition or was an unlimited print run of the set, it didn't have the 1E. They didn't start doing that until the next set. So that automatically right there for a lot of people is like, okay, you know, like, hello, this is not 100% real. And you know, Sean, that's not all with this little sticker, because the barcode, I have started working in retail, Sean. I am now using barcodes. I am now reading product codes. So I consider myself an aficionado. I'm just kidding. I know a little bit about it, but I know when something's wrong or not. And a lot of times, if you don't know about barcodes, the barcodes are pretty much supposed to read the product code. So theoretically, on a first edition base set box, the code should be the WOC06033, not the 1E. There's no 1E on it. That's what it should read. And even if the barcode or if the product code is that 1E, so let's say Logan Paul's box is legitimate, the one with the 1E, then the barcode should read that same thing with the 1E. Guess what? It doesn't.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that's another red flag. If people are like, you know what? I don't think that this is real. But that's not all, Sean. We're talking about $3.5 million, and there's this many problems. Looks like somebody didn't copy their homework correctly, because on the packaging tape as well, we look at past boxes, we look at boxes that are around, and you see on the boxes there's no period at the end of seal, or I'm sorry, at the end of the sentence, and seal isn't capitalized as well. Well, guess what? If you read Logan Paul's box, as PokeBeach has shown a great picture of that, it is not like the others, Sean. It is very different. So not only is the barcode not reading correctly, the product numbers are a little bit scuffy. An authentication company that doesn't really deal with Pokemon cards ever is approving this, but the tape, Sean, is also a little bit skeptical. But Sean,
yes,
I mean, this is just like weird. I mean, the box has not been open yet. Logan Paul has not opened it.
Commented on it even. On like whether or not
he really just put out the video of him buying it, and then that's pretty much it at this point. So, are we ever gonna know if it's real?
So one thing that I was discussing with Jake briefly before this is, like, I think one could assume, you know, if you want to, you could simply believe that Jake Paul is really as naive, and the people around him are as naive as they say they are, right? Which, like, maybe anything's possible, right? Like, Occam's razor would say maybe that is the simplest explanation, so it should be the correct one. However, an individual who has millions of dollars to spend on things like a case of Pokemon cards, there is a level of naivete that I can grant to people, but, like, you don't become this wealthy and this media savvy without having some understanding of of the world and how you got there, right? Like,
yeah, I mean, like, we can all agree that this guy is dumb, right? Like, we can agree that he's dumb, but he's millions and bajillions of dollars smarter than I am. You know, he has made it in this world. I don't think it was just pure dumb luck, right? I don't believe content creators just make it from pure dumb luck. I believe it's all, like, granted and like they're intelligent in certain ways, and
he has an intelligence in some capacity, right? And like I think I would assume part of that is like knowing that like, hey, this is probably a little fishy. The person he bought it from, like the fact that the box was originally purchased by Card Kahuna, who made a video about it, and then it has now been passed on to Logan Paul, who's making a video about it. It's almost like they're never gonna open the box because it is the king's what is it? The emperor's clothes, right? If you don't ever confront the fact that this thing is fake, and everybody knows it is, but most people that are going to click and watch the videos about it and, you know, write the articles about it, they're not, other than Poca Beach, they're not going to be doing the due diligence, and they're just going to assume, yes, he did this, and here's millions of more views that gets you, you know, and you might say to yourself, well, yeah, but it still cost him $3.5 million. I was, you know, discussing with other people before this too, like, this just feels like a little shenanigansy to me because, like, you know, what would be, if we assumed that he's actually smarter than we give him credit for, which I don't think is unfair, then, like, what would the ulterior motive to be buying a box that you think is fake, that is most likely fake? Like, and the reality is, like, look, at some point, if he does open it, he should be able to recuperate get the money back, right? And if along the process, he's also able to make hundreds of thousands of dollars in video view, ad revenue, and all of this other stuff, right? Like promoting these box breaks he's doing, basically just increasing his fame, and it costs him little to nothing in the process. Like, why wouldn't you do something like this, right? Like, it doesn't, like, if it's real, the hype is great. If it's fake, the hype is great. The hype is great either way for Logan Paul. So there's a part of me that's like, yeah, we can all make fun of him, like, oh, look at this idiot. But, like, at the same time, like, there's probably more here than we're maybe giving Logan Paul credit for. That's my thought there, Jake. What about you?
I think there's an interesting point to note that Card Kahuna made a video, purchased the product, made a video about it, and then right away sold it. Didn't even open it.
Yep.
What if the point of this is repeating that process, you know?
It's an unverifiable, you know.
Buy the product, it is verified, so it is authentic. Therefore, you know, there's no harm on Logan, right? He didn't make this. He got it from some other guy, and it was authenticated by a company. Whether we really think that authentication is legitimate or not, you know, the facts stand as it's been authenticated and given to Logan Paul. Make some videos about it, right? Saying how you want to get some clout, you know, because, I mean, it's content creation, you know, you're always trying to get more clout. And then go ahead and sell it, make more money on it. You know, you hold it for a little bit, you boost its popularity a little bit, and then you can in turn sell it for 4 million plus.
So this is where I actually think the buck stops, is with Logan, because we don't know how much Card Kahuna bought it for, but almost certainly it was not 3.5 million.
Yeah, I am sure it was less than 3. I'm sure that Card Kahuna or whoever, or Shine 150, the person who sold it to Logan Paul, they bought it for some sort of amount, but then they bought it for 2.7 million and then sold it to Logan Paul for 3.5. That's an $800,000 profit. Like, that's sitting pretty for like a normal person like you and I, Sean, you know.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting for me to see where this ends up, because there will be, I think Logan Paul, of all the people that are collecting these cards in the world, there's no one that's willing to spend the amount of money that Logan Paul is on these products, even if they're fake and even for the hype, whatever. Like, there just isn't another human out there who's willing to do that. All of the other collectors, like if you see it, like Steve Aoki, some of the other YouTubers, right? Dahi Denogla, the other YouTubers who like open Pokemon stuff on the side, they either don't have the money or don't have the willingness to take those risks the way that Logan Paul does, because, you know, Logan Paul is kind of like a Mr. Beast in that, like, it's not about the money. It's about the hype and the fame that comes along with it, whatever. But all the other collectors, their whole career isn't based on this stuff. You know, like Steve Aoki's a musician. He's not going to drop $4 million on a box that's probably fake. You know, if he wants to go buy a first edition box, there's others out there he can buy. That's fine, you know? So this is the one where I feel like Logan partially looked at the fake base set opening that, you know, remember Leonhardt that he went there and they did an opening and it got millions of views. There was like all these news articles about it, etc. I think Logan Paul very well might have looked at this situation and said, you know, to quote the Markiplier meme, I can milk this. And, you know, it's just like, hey, if one fake box can get 10 million views or whatever, think of how much 6 fake boxes could get. And I think that is the game they're playing right now. And, you know, I would just warn people, like, don't get taken for a ride on this one. Sometimes, at some way, if you don't like Logan Paul, even if you like watching some of his videos, like, whatever. But, like, I think, you know, I think this is theater. All theater here at this point. And, you know, the only person getting burned here is the people who believe it.
I just want to know as well. So $3.5 million, that's what he bought it at.
Mm-hmm.
How many views on YouTube would it take to eclipse that number? You know, you talk about like make videos about it, you know, it gains a ton of traction, a lot of art. I mean, I think it's hard to justify how much that'll actually be because more subscribers will, you know, affect in
long term
for everything else, you know, long term. But how much would it take? Because I feel like if Logan Paul's looked at this and he's like, okay, I can milk this, as you say, you know, like I want to know what that number is of like, it's gotta be like some number. It's gotta be an astronomical number, right? $3.5 million is not cheap.
If you turn it into maybe a 2 to 3 episode arc, and each of those episodes has a separate sponsor on top of the ad revenue, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's that too.
And he's doing things with companies like Whatnot or whatever that would, you know, where he sells the box breaks. And we've seen the price of his box break things before, and those will go for 3 times the price of a pack normally. You combine all of this, and it's a $3.5 million essentially investment in content and in a business. And, you know, at the end of the day, it's a business expense. You know, he doesn't, you know, my guess is that this is getting routed through his business accounts, owning these boxes. And if he opens videos, it all goes through that. And then it just shows up on his profits and losses. And it's basically a nothing burger to him. Right. So I think that, honestly, I think this is just, it's a lot of shenanigans here. And, you know, maybe he was really duped, and I'm ascribing far too much strategery to him. But, you know, that's my opinion. I think that you could certainly make up a lot of the costs there from a business perspective, not just on pure ad revenue, but ad revenue, sponsorship, sales of other things that are associated with the increased hype and fame that comes along with that. You know, it's not all one thing. So
I will say he hasn't made a video in 6 months.
Logan?
Pulling up his YouTube channel.
I don't know if he has he does streams and stuff like that too. And I don't know if maybe there's like other channels. Who knows?
Because all the Pokemon stuff has been on like his main channel, you know, the $1 million first edition box break that he did, and, you know, spending $1,500 on the Charizard, or not 1,500. Well, no, it is 1,500.
I mean, but spending a lot of money.
All of that stuff in the original box that he bought that jumped on the hype a year ago, like that's all been on his main channel.
I mean, yeah, who knows? You know, like I said, I don't follow Logan Paul, so that's a fair point.
Up his YouTube profile as you were doing some explaining.
Yeah, I mean, that's a fair point. Maybe he is not actually making videos, and some of these assumptions are right, but he does have the impulsive. Oh God, I hate dropping things. He has the podcast. He's got the podcast, and that's a channel. That's a separate channel for the podcast. So he is making content. There is revenue coming in from this. But yeah, that's all my thoughts on it. Jake, do you have any closing remarks on this Logan Paul nonsense before we move on to greener pastures?
A lot of people will scuff this aside and be like, Logan Paul is a freaking idiot. I hate Logan Paul. And a lot of podcast listeners probably, as soon as we started talking about Logan Paul, probably like clicked off like, oh, I don't want to hear about Logan Paul. And you know what? I honestly don't blame you. Like, he's not my favorite person. I don't enjoy him, but especially when it comes to the Pokemon trading card game, we've had many conversations of like card prices and the hype, of people doing XYZ and, the whole thing about how Pokemon cards were so hard to find for so long. I think that this is noteworthy news because honestly, reading this article, what's to stop another person from looking at this, taking notes on everything that is wrong and, selling their own fake box that looks even better than this,
Yeah, I mean, it does come down to it's almost like, Pokemon cards and collectibles are not just for collectors. It's become an asset or a tool for content creation, and a lot of that is
like a status.
Yeah, but a lot of that is
like
what drives the price. Yeah, and that drives the price, though, right? Like they're not thinking about it. I'm not saying this is all of what Logan Paul. I think he does actually enjoy collecting to a degree. I'll give him that, but a lot of this stuff is like, I've decided to make part of my content creation around opening up extremely rare and valuable collectible items. And now it's, that's just a tool for your content creation now. And it just has a negative effect on the people who actually care. And I think that is what makes the conversation worthwhile for us, in my opinion.
I guess by definition of people who care, probably like the people like you and I.
Yeah. Like,
we don't have the money to buy first edition boxes up the wazoo, like we can barely afford the card game as it is itself.
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't expect to ever own a first edition Pokemon card box. That's fine. But, I think if one were to give them to either of us, we wouldn't be opening them up and selling them as box breaks either.
Yeah.
So, everybody's collecting is, they can have it be what they want, but I do think that there comes a point when you're like, you're not really in this to be a part of the community. You're in this because it gets you content. And that's a whole different reason to be in it. And, like, it's just weird, man. It's weird. But Jake,
it'll be interesting to see if this garners any more news. And Sean and I will pull it up and talk about it if things do come up. But one thing that has come up, especially as we get closer and closer to Brilliant Stars, some new cards were announced from Starbirth, Sean. Starbirth, if you do not remember, premieres on January 14th in Japan, and it's going to be part of Brilliant Star, the set coming around the rest of the world. And there's been a couple cards here and there that have been announced and stuff like that. But there's one that I want to mention. Only really one. And that is the Luxray, Sean. Now, we talk about stage twos, single prize stage twos. They're just bad. They're just not good, right? There's too much snipe going around. There's just too much stuff. But I want to talk about this Luxray because I actually think this Luxray is kind of cool, especially when we are in a format where there's a good, healthy amount of like energy acceleration methods. The one that I want to talk about, Sean, is Luxray Stage 2, 150 HP Lightning Pokemon. For a single energy, Sean, you can do one of two things on this Luxray for a single Lightning energy. One, Energy Crush, 50 times damage. 50 times is a lot. This attack does 50 damage times the amount of energy attached to all of your opponent's Pokemon. Okay. That's not terrible. That's actually not super bad right now. A lot of attacks right now cost 2-3 energies.
Yeah.
So boom, you can stack up some damage, especially if you're just chip-shotting things.
I mean, and especially,
point, you're doing...
I was going to say, especially
like
on
2-hit KOs and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, and I do think the Pokemon Company has recognized that stage twos are in a rough spot and have been for a long time. And, you think about other stage 2s that have been viable in the past, like, like Charizard. Both the team up one and the one that came after, the one that goes with like Leon. But both of those require 2 energy. And that's not to say like, look, you have to evolve. So it takes a turn or 2. So spending the energy is, attaching the energy for turn is, not out of the question because it takes you at least 2 turns to get into this. But I think having it be 1 energy means that, you don't have to overcommit in 2 turns to a line that might get blown up. So you can basically have like, hey, I'll have 2 Pokemon that could evolve. You can choose to knock out one of them. But if the other one survives, then all I need is that 1 attachment for turn. You're not wasting. It's not very wasteful. And I really do like, and I hope they keep doing this transition towards single energy stage 2 attacks. Because
you're focusing more on evolving rather than, like you said, attaching, and then it gets blown up before you even get to attack, know, and the focus. Because, I mean, think about it. We got Escape Rope in format. We have a bunch of Snipe in Rapid Strike Urshifu and Jolteon. We have Boss's Orders. That's a big card to mention. We have Umbreon VMAX bringing stuff up as well. So I like this. I agree. But the second attack, Sean, is also pretty sweet, in my opinion. Light or Flash Impact for 1 lightning energy, 110 damage. This attack also does 30 damage to one of your bench Pokemon, especially in combination with this first attack, right? Let's say you get to do 250 damage. Let's think about the V-Star format because Arceus V-Star is going to be coming in. 250 damage because of your opponent has 5 energy on the field. If it runs away to the bench, you can snipe that for 30 and
it's one of your benched Pokemon, Jake.
Oh, darn, no, I can't read. Enough 22 horrible. This card sucks, Sean. Don't play this card. Never mind. Everything's out the window. I'm done. Podcast is over. Sorry. See you next week.
Sorry. I'm sorry to blow you up like that, Jake. You were like having such a good time imagining that this attack was
so
good.
Excited about this card. Like I messaged Sean. I was like, I want to talk about this card. This is kind of a cool card. Now it's just bad. Bad.
I mean, look, I will say there was another set of cards like a Muck and Grimer combo. The problem with the Muck and Grimer combo is it's just not good. Even though it's only stage 1, they're all so bad. So I'm like, it's great that they're announcing these cards, but I will give you this though. 50 times damage is not nothing. That's a big deal. And against certain archetypes, like, if you're playing against Mew even, and Mew is, they have to churn through a single prize deck, that can take some time. And if you're able to, like, if they have all 4 of their Fusion Strike energies on board plus others, you're doing 200 plus damage a couple of turns in a row. That could be a lot. So, I do think that there is some validity to like maybe this is whether or not you see a stage 2 counterbox in the future because of the Zoroark. We keep talking about it. Nobody ever uses it. Maybe it never will be. I mean, a little
in
bit.
Malamar.
But it's one of those cards that, like, I think has potential. And maybe they're hoping that if they give people enough single energy stage 2s, that they will combine that with the Zoroark to make a counterbox, a stage 2 counterbox, which I think is actually really good potential single prize design. And I hope that it actually evolves into that. Who knows? But this would be, probably one of the best lightning Pokemon that you could put in the deck. Because not only can you bring it out with Zoro, but you also have the Luxio from the original, I think, base set Sword and Shield that can come onto the field for free if you draw it to start the turn. That's more of, I think, the bonus. I don't think you would build around that, but
you would probably play those, but I don't know if you would ever actually expect to top deck it unless you did something like a Rangaroo.
Right. So like, and knowing that this is coming out and Oranguru will be rotating not long after, probably you don't plan for that, but for a little bit of time, maybe. But I do think that this gives it hope, the archetype.
I am wary though. I am wary though, because you look at the format, especially right now, and a lot of things are like discarding the energy or only having a little at a time. So, right, like Urshifus, both of the Urshifus discard your energies.
Yep.
That kind of sucks. or you're only putting a little energy on at a time, right? Especially because this is fighting week. Gale Thrust most certainly destroys it.
Yeah.
For like 300 damage. And then the single strike Urshifu, I mean, beatdown doesn't need too much. I mean, you only need 3 energies, which, they'd still be doing 150 damage to you, but that's still a 2-shot or 3-shot.
Yeah.
They still have to 3-shot you even with that. And, Mew as well. Mew has looping ability. So, yeah, you could hit for 200 damage because they have 4 fusion strike energy in play, but as soon as you do that, they're just gonna loop right in. All they need is 1 power tablet to knock you out with the loop attack. And especially because you get into then Jolteon as well. Jolteon only needs 1 energy to do its attack, and so they're just sitting pretty forever. They don't have to do anything. Now that this Pokemon can't do bench snipe, like, I'm just sad.
Yeah, it is. There are other combos that you could bench snipe with it because, again, it's a 1 energy attack, right? If you were going to build a counter box and let's say in the future meta, lightning weakness was relevant, that's the reason. Honestly, that's the reason that Pikarom was partially so good, is because there were a number of decent, I would say, cards that had a lightning weakness, and it really gatekept. Like Lapras VMAX. Lapras VMAX had a point in time where it was no joke. But the fact that Pikarom was good, it was like, I'm never going to play Lapras because it's weak to one of the most consistent decks in the format. No. So, there could come a time where lightning weakness is relevant again, and then I think this makes its way into a counter box, maybe.
Mm-hmm. It'll be interesting, and I want things to be cool. I want things to be good. I want to play cheap, different decks. Again, you can build Malamar for like less than $20. So
yes, indeed. And but I mean, speaking of cheap, different things, Jake. The last, I think, broad subject we wanted to talk about was Sander, the king of control, if you will. He posted something recently, and it was because there was a card that got announced, or leaked, I should say, quite early. I don't even think it's been announced in Japanese.
About this card for a while.
With the double,
I'm
thinking, I'm thinking about the Rose
energy that does -20 attack.
No, I was thinking about like what Roseanne's backup or whatever.
Oh,
because that is another engine piece for control that I wanted to talk about, and that got leaked, but it hasn't actually been announced in Japanese. My guess is it's coming in Starbirth.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so I wanted to bring this up because I know Jake is a control stan. So there's some interesting potential combos that might exist in the format for a little bit of time, at least with Eldegoss before it rotates. That could make certain control strategies viable if you can figure out how to lock your opponent at a certain turn.
So, for instance, for anyone who does not know, we have a couple possibilities of gigantic free retreaters, right? Togekiss, 310 HP, has free retreat. Corviknight has 320 HP, I believe, has free retreat. Umbreon VMAX, if it's got that Umbreon Espeon tool thing. I don't even know what it's called. But if the tool is attached, Umbreon VMAX has free retreat and also has the boss effect. And with Eldegoss and the double colorless energy, as I mentioned, I don't think it's actually called double colorless energy, but it's the energy that's coming out
that you can attach to Vs.
What?
It's the one that you can attach to Vs.
Yes, but it does -20 attack. That card, I just call it double colorless energy because that's the easiest way to explain it right now. But anyways, you attach that to Eldegoss, and Eldegoss has does 50 damage and goes right back into the deck. You play Cheryls to heal those VMAXs that are your pivots, right? You cannot get knocked out. You have extra wall options in Duraludon and Glaceon. We've seen a lot of popularity lately with Duraludon. We've even mentioned it several times, and you can also do a lot of damage. So let's say you're playing against Mew VMAX, right? If you have a single strike energy and this new upcoming double colorless energy on your Umbreon VMAX, you do knock out a Mew VMAX because you're hitting for 160 with that math because the plus 20 and negative 20 from the two different energies negate each other. So you're doing 160 times that by 2, 320. That knocks out a Mew with 310 HP. So there's some options with this deck. Now, is it going to be good? That we don't actually know that because Mew is very, very good. But there's the possibility, and maybe Control is the best that it's been since Sun and Moon rotated out. Control really hasn't been that good or viable in that sense.
Yeah, I mean, the card that I mentioned before that, I think it's Rosemary or Roseanne's backup or something. I can't remember if it goes to hand or back into deck, but you basically shuffle one of each card type back. I believe it's hard to read, and I would have to find the full explanation. I could probably find it here. Here it is. Yeah. It's into deck. Shuffle a Pokemon from your discard pile into your deck, a tool card, a stadium, and an energy. So that's how you can loop some of those special energies back in as well. So,
yeah, I mean, maybe you dug through at the bottom of your deck and you need to get a single strike energy back or whatever, or, you ended up having to bail on 3 of those double colorless energies off of research turn 1. You can get one of those back as well because you only need one really for the loop because you just attach, retreat, loop, slam Pokemon down, attach, retreat, loop.
Yeah. And that's big. Somebody did mention hey, if you get Marnied though, and you don't have very many cards in deck and almost no cards in hand, you just lose. I'm like, yeah,
there is always the possibility with Control because you're constantly expending resources and trying to get to the bottom of your deck. If you're not careful, you could put yourself in a position to be decked out, right? Whether that's through N in the old days, or Marshadow Let Loose, or through something like a Marnie. But if you're putting at least 2 cards back in the deck through Eldegoss, it's more than likely that you're probably okay off of Marnie because you get 4 cards, right? So you'd only need 2 cards in... No, you need 3 cards in hand because you'd have to draw for your turn. So that would be 5. So...
I mean, I do think that... Control will make a comeback in 2022. This is my a long-term prediction for the year because you can obviously see with Roseanne's backup, there was also the other card, I want to say, was it a Azumarill? That lets you
brings back supporters?
Well, no, that lets you put 2 item cards in your hand. Or 2 cards.
No, we talked about that. Junk Hunt returning, that's Floatzel.
Floatzel, that's it, yeah. So between the adventure, the Roseanne's backup, the Floatzel, the fact that you can loop things with Eldegoss.
And keep in mind, Eldegoss gets a supporter out of the discard too. So you could theoretically do this Roseanne thing every single turn if you need to. Or you can Cheryl every single turn if you need to. Or whatever.
Well, actually, no. Roseanne does not get you a supporter. It's Pokemon, Tool, Stadium, and Energy.
No. But you can get Roseanne off of Eldegoss is what I'm saying.
Oh, yes.
Yes, and then you can really put more things in the deck. That's what I was trying to say, my apologies.
Oh, yeah. No, I really like that. Yeah, I hadn't even thought about that as obviously that's the point of Eldegoss too, is to put a supporter back in your hand. So you don't even need the Palpad combo.
Yeah, I mean, Palpad's going to rotate anyways, right? Because it was in Sword and Shield base set.
Yeah. So, but I think that this is going to be a big year for it because... you also have a tool card that never gets used, but I think because you can, recycle them, there's a tool card that says when this Pokemon is knocked out, discard the top 3 of your opponent's deck or something like that. It's basically a mill 3 effect. Is it 4 on the tool card?
I think that's the shovel, right?
Yeah, Cursed Shovel. That's it.
Yeah.
So, and you could think if you can loop between Floatzels and Eldegosses, if you can somehow come up with a combo that loops things like Fan of Waves to get rid of special and Crushing Hammers to get rid of everything else or whatever, some combo of that. And then if they knock you out, and if you're getting through their deck and their deck's getting small and you're milling them, you could start milling them of the cards that you're putting on the bottom with Fan of Waves, right? Like the energy. So eventually I think you can come up with a situation where you maybe have them run out of cards. Now, who knows? Honestly, the fact that Mew VMAX can Oko your big dudes, your big walls that you're supposed to pivot into, you know, it basically means that like you need to have at least 2 things on the bench if you're worried about Oko, and that's not ideal for I think some of these strategies. So who knows? But I do think this year is going to be a big year for Control. What do you think, Jake?
I think that Control will definitely be better. The problem a lot with Control is, one, you know, it's very difficult to pilot, right? So it's already going to have less players, and especially when we live in an era right now where there are many top players not playing, you know, in the online era in terms of playing in these online tournaments. There's just going to not be a lot of popularity, and there's not going to be a lot of great moments, right? Sander doesn't play in every single tournament, right, online. He's doing other things, and so a lot of people also feel the same about that. And then also it's just hard for Control decks to do things online. You know, you can call judge that your opponent is slow playing the heck out of you, but I mean, they can't really sit in on the game. They can't really do anything about it. Like, online events are not meant for Control just based on how the online client is, right?
I think that's a really good point. Like, in terms of, if you can't actively mill your opponent, Control online is really difficult because, you know, say your opponent gets like a super great start and wins the first game, and then your strategy is going to take you probably the rest of the time of the round. You just, I don't know, man. Yeah, it can get rough. It can get rough where your opponent can just at least pull you into a tie, and it's kind of hard for you to counter that, because what is slow play? Like, if the client itself has a timer, right? So like, if you just go by the client's timer, it's it is really tough. But I think when we return back to IRL play, there may be a situation where any of the players who got into the game during the pandemic and have only really played online, I do think that, you know, more experienced players could maybe take advantage of that if a good Control deck comes about, and surprise a lot of these players who maybe just don't have any experience playing against Control.
Well, you talk about surprise. Here's another thing that Control doesn't have. It is the element of surprise. You know, we're in an open deck list format constantly, so your opponent right out of the gate is going to know what you're doing. Whereas, you know, in the future in IRL play, I can start an Umbreon V, right? And my opponent may just think like, oh, it's single strike. And so they play out their first turn like single strike. Whereas in this online format, you look at my list and it doesn't matter who I start. You know what my deck is. You know what I'm trying to do, and you know how I'm going to do it, essentially. Yeah. So, I mean, it's just, I just don't recommend playing Control for online, just because there's too many disadvantages, and it's not that great. And even if this deck becomes better, like even if this archetype becomes better in Brilliant Star, I mean, I don't know. I mean, you can play it at locals. I might try it at locals, right? Because, I mean, like, locals are, IRL play is just different, but I wouldn't do it for, I would do online for like ladder and like practicing and stuff.
Yeah, I think that's a very fair and smart assessment, which is like, yeah, maybe Control comes back, but only in IRL environments. It just doesn't work in the online world as much.
I mean, if it was a lot better, right? If it was a ton better, that would be a whole different story. But, you know, the fact that it's not as good is what's kind of gatekeeping it out. But Sean, before we end this podcast today, do we have some thank yous to do?
I mean, yeah, I think we do. I think we tweeted about it. But, you know, big shout out to the Triple P, Pittsburgh Pokemon Podcast. They did an awards, an end of year awards thing, and we were nominated for Podcast of the Year, and them and their community selected us for whatever it means. But it was very kind of them, and we definitely were like, I was tickled. So yeah, that was nice.
It definitely brings a smile on the face, because the Pokemon TCG community is very small. It's pretty niche, especially when you talk about competitively. So to have other friends in the podcast realm like Triple P, you know, like Flow TCast, like Tag Team and stuff, and to even be nominated, I mean, we didn't win the podcast, so it was rigged. Maxlow rigged it. I'm just kidding, he didn't. But to be nominated, even, is a huge honor, is a huge accomplishment, and puts a big smile on the face. So thank you, everyone who listened to us in 2021. Again, cannot wait for this year. We're kicking off this year as well with a special interview next week, and it's going to be from someone. You may have seen the tweet that we posted recently about Magic or Hearthstone players. We're going to be talking about a lot of those because we think that those players, those clients, are going to be affecting us here real soon in the Pokemon community. So thank you so much for listening to the Pokemon TCG podcast, the podcast that revolves around the evolving meta. I almost did not get it that time, but starting off 2022 strong with a great podcast with my buddy Sean. As always, have a great rest of the day, and we'll see you next week.